we voted by voice vote that Mason's manual would be the legislative procedures manual, and there was a motion made that Robert's Rules of Order, in addition to Mason's manual, would be for committees, and that failed by a voice vote. At the end of the day, we split up our efforts now into two subcommittees, one for rules and one for recommendations and procedures that we would make to this body in December. And that's our report.
And I have one final general comment. Last night before I went to bed, CNN ran a special segment on the amount of money that's in our federal Congress. It was the best government money can buy, and talking about the pay-for-play schemes that both parties, and they interviewed members of Congress from both parties, how they have to raise a certain amount of money to give to the parties in order to get leadership positions and move up the ranks, even if they don't have an opponent, and $250,000 a year in some instances. And as I was watching this, I was absolutely convinced that if we take no action, we are headed towards a state of complete disrepute on behalf of our people for their legitimacy. We are only governed by the consent that we authorize that government to have. And that consent will continue to erode if we take no action. So what we're doing here is important, but the second thing that I want to say is, as I look at this room, I've counted 9 women, 2 African Americans, 2 Hispanics, and that doesn't look like America. So when you go home to your states, it is paramount that you recruit minority members, that you recruit women. There's not a single Democratic woman in this room. There will not be 38 states that ratify a single thing that we do if we don't change the complexity and the makeup of who is sitting in this room. And it's on all of us to take the importance of what we're doing back home and recruit Democrats, recruit women, recruit members of the minority to come and join us in saying enough is enough. The time has come for us to pick up our responsibility and cause to action so that we can help restore confidence of the American people. But we have to look like the American people in order to do that. So please help me in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for that report from the co-chairs. At this time, we'd like to have discussion on the report. And if it's easier, if you'd like to just stand at your seat and ask a question, and I'll repeat the question for everyone, or if you'd like to come forward and make general comments at the microphone, if that's easier, we can do either one. Any member of the Assembly today like to make comments or ask a question? Come on forward, sure. Or if you'd like to speak to the microphone, whichever you'd like to do.
Thank you again, John Wood from Florida, and I want to thank both of the co-chairmen for their hard work in addressing these issues. I want to just follow up on the perspective of the motion that was tabled on what a constitutional convention could address. And this is an important issue. In Florida, we have addressed it with a statute similar to the one that has been passed in Indiana. And I think for this process to go forward, and again, I think every sovereign state has to make that decision on how their delegates will be selected and instructed. I don't think a convention can, or this group can tell the states how to do that, because we are each a sovereign state. So I would vote or recommend, again, as we have done in our committee, I would recommend that that be the foundation of us moving forward, is that we are coming together as sovereign states, and we have to respect the sovereignness, or whatever the word is, sovereignty of each of our states. So for me, I'm very comfortable with what Florida has done. We were able to convince our Senate and our House and our governor to go forward with that. I certainly agree with the comments of the Democratic co-chair, and I stated that yesterday. If we do not engage the American people in this process, then we're really kidding ourselves. The success of this attempt, or this utilization of that emergency cord that the founders put in the Constitution, has to be a reflection of the will of the American people. And as the Democratic senator said, it's a lot more than just a Republican-dominated Florida government. We have to get everyone behind this. And I really feel, and in Florida, we've demonstrated on certain issues, there is wide agreement. On the fiscal responsibility of the federal government, I think there is wide agreement. We showed that in Florida in 2010 with a straw ballot, asking our electorate in a general election, how do you feel about the federal government being required to balance their budget? 73% of our voters agreed. So the subject's very important. And that's why for Florida, our delegates are going to be selected and instructed as to what they can participate in. So with that, I appreciate all your work.
Thank you for your comments. Representative Kapinga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted a quick comment on that. We had a long discussion in Judiciary around this subject, and they're actually tasked with researching this further. So they've actually got it in a subcommittee, but we did spend a significant amount of time on, hey, what does the application need to look like? What kind of criteria are we going to put around this? What are we comfortable with? So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. So thank you, gentlemen from Florida, for your comments. And Judiciary will be tackling this one.
Thank you. And I should comment too, we all know that there's going to be some bleeding over into the different committees and subcommittees of different topics, certainly with some of the rules questions and some of the judiciary questions. So the co-chairs will try to keep that straight along as well as the co-chairs of the executive committee. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wanted to make a comment on what was presented there. We do, part of that discussion, which I just failed to mention in my report, was this whole idea of there is a ratification process. And as high a bar as 2/3 is for a convention, we have a higher bar to actually ratify what that convention does with 3/4 of the state. So again, there's that, but you're not going to get a lot of states. There's going to be several states that won't even show up if there isn't some kind of restriction. And I also failed to mention and want to thank Senator Van Zandt from Florida, who was our recorder, who did an excellent job and drafting this. And so I applaud the good senator from, or your representative. You're in there? Okay, so it's representative. I get used to calling people senator.
Thank you for your comments. Other discussion or questions for the co-chairs on any of the topics in the Rules and Procedure Committee? Anyone? All right. Well, I'm sorry. You can ask from the chair, and I'll repeat it, or you can come forward. Okay. The question was about Mason's manual, Mr. Chairman.
It was adopted as our procedural manual. There'll need to be rules then, because Mason's manual isn't a rules manual, it's a procedural manual, and so we'll need to then attach some rules but that's kind of the fallback and guideline for what we do in our process. Does that answer that question?
Other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, thank you, co-chairs. We appreciate your work. I know those are tough topics. That's appropriate. I said this at the beginning of the general session this morning. I want to emphasize it again. The work that the committees are doing is ongoing, and there are, I think, a variety of motions passed and a variety of discussion in all three of the committees. The subcommittees, of course, have not met yet as separate bodies. So any of the recommendations or motions passed, those things are still within the committees and have not been adopted by this General Assembly. There's some good reason for that. We want to be able to adopt a set of rules and procedures in toto versus separately as we go along. The second reason is, as I mentioned at the beginning of yesterday, there are only, and I say only, 22 states actually have appointed members here, although we had 33 on the roster. So we, in the spirit of Senator Hoseman's comments, we really do need to get our legislative leaders and legislatures around the country taking action to appoint and give authority for folks to come here and act. And I'm certainly not discouraged, frankly. I'm actually very encouraged that we were able to get 22 states appointed and 33 represented. Again, this is an extra pay for anybody. It's the middle of the summer. Some folks are still in session, as we know. Some folks had elections this week. So as we move forward, I'm very optimistic, which has always been my gravest fault, but I'm very optimistic that this is going to grow in December and then on into the future years and be much more representative and much more complete in terms of the number of states that are represented. So again, I want to thank all the co-chairs for their activity so far.